Jaman Production.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Thank you for agreeing to talk about these topics that we're about to be talking about. And Darius, I just want to let you know this was kind of inspired by you somewhat, as I read your post the other day about your friend that got shot here in the city, and then about Ahmaud. So when I read that and I felt your pain about how you're fearing as being a young Black man that you might have to fear for your life just by going to school, going to the store. So it really touched me. And then to see the issue with Ahmaud Arbery right after that, and just everything that's going on in our country today, that's why I wanted to talk about this. It's important to me because it hit close to home because I had a brother murdered. So I feel the pain of the family, and I feel the pain of you being a young Black man. And so I invited the other participants because they each have something to offer. Jared running for district attorney, and we know that in Brunswick, where the district attorney kind of turned their nose away from doing their job because of who the, people were. And so I wanted Jared to weigh in on that. Then I invited former Senator Tarver, former U.S. Attorney Tarver, because he has a lot of expertise in the judicial area as well, and I wanted him to weigh in, which is why he's running for U.S. Senate, because we need a change in the White House, and we need a change across all demographics for the political landscape we have. I invited Dr. Goodman because as a young African-American pastor, I want to know what the church thinks they should do, what their responsibility is, how they respond to everything that's going on. And then Unique can also respond to that as well. And Unique has a mentoring program for young African-American men. And so bringing in the mentor piece and everything. So that's where this is going. And that's the reason why, we wanted to do this. So
appreciate you putting that together, sis.
Sorry.
Appreciate your leadership.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Tuesday Talks with Tonia has typically been a women's platform, as you all know. So you guys are making history within Tuesday Talks because you're the first men to ever be on Tuesday Talks, and I've been doing this a little over 3 years. So thank you. And Unique has been trying to get on for a while, and I kept telling him no. So
I felt some kind of way about that. I believe in diversity, so.
Well, I get it, but it was for a reason. I created that space for women. But Darius, why don't you tell the gentleman what I read, because some of them probably don't know what you said on your post about all of this stuff.
Right. So Jalen Parks was a classmate of mine that was unfortunately killed on the Get and Go on Winston Spring Road. You may have heard the story. Jalen and I graduated from the Academy of Richmond County in 2015. And as you know, classmates may go their own separate ways, but every time we had the chance to see one another, we always showed love. And, even if it was just a casual, what's up, man, how everything's going? That's how the conversation would go. Jalen worked at the neighborhood Walmart off of Winston Spring Road. So he was not only lived in this neighborhood, but actually worked in this neighborhood as well. And I'm reading the article. Well, my mom read it first, I think, and the next day she says, the guy name was Jalen Parks. And I said, Jalen Parks? I went to school with Jalen Parks. And went to Facebook and searched the feed and saw a lot of our mutual friends and our classmates were saying RIP Jalen, rest in peace Jalen, things of that sort. And then unfortunately, not too far after that, the Ahmaud video dropped on social media. So as a young African-American male, it puts you in this almost like a dichotomy of, I'm not safe in my own neighborhood, right? Because I have to worry about someone that looks like me that's trying to do harm to me. And Jalen died by the way of gun violence. Someone shot and killed him while he was pumping gas at the Get and Go. And then when we saw the Ahmaud video, it's just like, well, the world that we think has changed. You know, President Obama, we all said, oh, post-racial America is finally here. But as we saw what happened in Brunswick, that's not really the case. So as a young African-American male, we have to deal with violence within our own community. And then we also have to deal with the implicit bias, the stereotypes, the profiling, and sometimes just flat out the racism that still plagues this country. So yeah, it was a lot going on, and I just felt compelled to speak about both issues.
And so you didn't know Ahmaud, but you knew Jalen. But the Ahmaud thing, when I look at what happened with him, and you just graduated, congratulations, with your bachelor's in political science. So that's an awesome, awesome feat. A lot of Black males don't get to go that journey. And so for you to complete that is awesome. But then to have to fear, even though you know you're law abiding, you know you don't hang around the wrong crowds, it doesn't matter. It just really doesn't matter. You can be any place at any time, and something like this can happen to you. So thank you for sharing what you feel as a young Black man. You know, all of you guys every day probably have some kind of in the back of your mind, could it be me? You know, even Ed, you know, you would think Ed, a U.S. attorney, you know, an attorney running for U.S. Senate, maybe something like that wouldn't happen to him, but maybe it would. And so it doesn't matter your background, doesn't matter your status. It matters because your color, that's it. Jared, can you speak to us from the DA perspective? I see that they've added a young African-American female to take over this case. And as DAs, I think the importance of DAs, we have to vote the right people in. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do this too, to explain to people the reason why voting is important, the reason why we need to go to the polls, in your case in November, in Ed's case in November. But we also have to educate people. They don't understand how that affects their community. So would you speak to the DA perspective and your expertise as an attorney and what you've seen and what you've experienced, even as an attorney, a Black attorney in a predominantly Black community, and what you see day in and day out from a injustice standpoint? Absolutely.
First, I just want to give my love and respect to Ahmaud Arbery and his family. I was actually graveside today in Waynesboro, and I didn't realize it at the time, but there was a lady who needed a seat, and I had a tailgate chair in the back of my truck, and I handed it to her. I said, you know, you have to be a Georgia fan to sit on this. And I didn't realize that young lady was actually Ahmaud Arbery's grandmother. Oh, wow. And so I got to look into her eyes, got to look into his mother's eyes, some other family members of his. And you know, what I commented on was I didn't see helplessness. I didn't see despair. I saw determination. Much like the open casket at Emmett Till's funeral, they are not going to allow this to happen again without them at least having put up some fight. And they're calling for justice, and I'm happy to stand with them. The DA's office, people don't understand how much that office impacts the entire community. When we were at the Martin Luther King parade, I was shaking hands, and one lady said, "What do I need a DA for? I don't get in trouble." And I said, "Ma'am, you don't understand. It's not just about when you get in trouble. It's about when you're a victim too. You know, because there's two different ways to get justice. And you know, the DA is the person who is a check on law enforcement to make sure that law enforcement follows the law themselves. The DA is supposed to review all those investigations and make sure that not only that they followed the law, but also that everyone's rights are protected and that the person accused of the crime actually did it, that there's actually probable cause to believe that. And the DA then has the world of discretion as to what happens next. The DA decides whether a case it gets formally charged. So the DA is the one who makes a recommendation to the judge as to whether someone needs to stay in jail while they're awaiting trial. The DA decides mostly whether a case goes to a plea or a trial. And the DA has the loudest voice in the courtroom as to whether someone goes to prison or not. And so the person who makes those decisions has to be someone who understands what it's like to fight on the side of victims, but it also needs to be someone who understands what it's like to be pulled out of a car and treated like a criminal and understand both sides of this equation. The days of having a DA who has no perspective on the community impact of law enforcement action has to be over, because what happens is when one of their buddies gets in trouble shooting some unarmed man, we see exactly what happened: the cover up, the equivocation, or the justification of these actions. And that's the other side of this. Is I want to get past the point where we're all looking for that one fact that makes this a justified murder. That's not the way we should be looking at this. Even, the video came out of Ahmaud going in that construction site. That's one, that's not a felony. Two, that there's no, that doesn't even necessarily mean that a crime was committed. But most importantly, even if it were, that does not mean that he deserves to lose his life. That does not mean that there should be some life sentence, and that on the street, two men who are not currently in their law enforcement capacity get to determine whether he takes another breath. It's time for us to realize that nothing changes unless we stand together and we actually pay attention to who our officials are and hold them accountable.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. You have to hold people accountable, but I think a lot of times they've been so used to being above the law and they think they are the law. And so they don't have to answer to anyone, because once people get elected in office, they forget about their constituents and who put them there. And a lot of times the people who put them there don't go back and challenge them. They don't go back and say, hey, I don't agree with, how this is happening. I don't agree with what you're saying or doing. We just let them do what they want to do after they've gotten our vote, maybe our money, maybe our, campaign time, whatever. We let them go and do what they want to do. So I think people need to understand, if you elect someone into office, it is your right to go and challenge them, to go to them and say, hey, I have a problem. We have a problem with what's going on. You're not representing us like you said you would. And I'm going to bring you in as the former U.S. attorney and being nominated by Obama in what I call the good years. And that's my personal preference. So, but speak to the judicial system from what you've seen as a U.S. attorney for the Southern states. So you were on a higher level, you saw more, you engaged more. And I'm quite sure there are injustices everywhere, but what did you see, or what do you feel needs to be addressed and changed?
Well, I think one of the things that we're losing sight of is just the importance of our criminal justice system. I won't say just the judicial system, but our system for enforcing our laws. And I will point out that these laws are provisions that we all rely on every day. I mean, we go home at night and we close our doors, and we do that with a certain expectation that nobody's going to come in and kick in our doors, or when we leave in the morning, and we leave our personal property in our homes or in our cars. We do that because we expect that people are going to respect our rights to property. And if they don't, then there's a criminal justice system that's going to be there to enforce the laws that are put in place to protect us. As a former U.S. attorney, you come to recognize almost immediately the enormous discretionary authority that United States attorneys, that district attorneys have. It's one of the few jobs where if I were to go on TV or stand before the newspaper and put my hand on Jared's shoulder and say, I'm going to charge Jared with murder, it's going to be written in the paper. People are going to perceive that because I, in my capacity as a prosecutor, either at the federal level or at the state level, because I'm charging this man, there's a likelihood that he has committed the crime that I'm accusing him of. And there are provisions in place that prevent me as that official, that decider, that person that with the enormous discretion, from not having to do that in situations that compromise me. And I think that was a big issue with Ahmaud Arbery's case, and that I mean, anyone that has been a district, well, many people who have served as district attorney or as U.S. attorney, they find themselves in a position where somebody that they know, a friend, a family member, has been accused of committing a crime, and it would be a conflict of interest for that person to pass judgment on their relative or their close friend, or to not pass judgment.
Right.
Our system is supposed to provide a certain level of consistency, and that's what we strive for. That whoever you are, no matter what your family, which family you come from, no matter what you look like, no matter what color your skin, if you commit an offense, then everyone who commits, the expectation is that everyone who commits that same offense is going to be treated fairly, or at least have the opportunity to be treated fairly. And in this case, that opportunity appeared to have been, at least they attempted to take that opportunity away. They knew these gentlemen, they were their friends, somebody, and we don't know the total circumstances behind the situation, but somebody decided that, hey, we know these guys, they're good guys, we don't want to prosecute. And you know, fortunately, there were some district attorneys who recused themselves immediately, but certainly it should not have gone on for almost 3 months. You know, determining whether or not there's a legitimate, a real conflict of interest is something that all lawyers, whether civil or criminal, go through. It's a process that happens every day in law, and it generally takes at most a matter of hours, but certainly not. It doesn't require a number of months. And what I'm concerned now is, I'm pleased that they have identified a new district attorney from Cobb County. I know her and I met her before, to come in, and I have no doubt, I don't have any reason to believe that she won't do an excellent job. But I don't want this for folks to think that because they've gone out and they found an African American female to prosecute this case, that we're moving to a system where only African Americans can prosecute in these types of cases in order to please the African American community. And I certainly don't want that to be a case where in the reverse of the situation, that there's a expectation that we're going to go out and replace an African American prosecutor with somebody who's Caucasian because the community suspects what may happen or the outcome is going to come. I think we have a long way to go in terms of the criminal justice system being able to regain its credibility. People now suspect the process because they see they have seen an example of when discretion has been used inappropriately, and the reality is that we all have to have or believe that the system has credibility, because if we don't, there is no system. I mean, if you think about it, the people, us, we outnumber law enforcement. There's more of us than there are of them. I mean, we have to respect their authority, and if we don't, if any time we as the mass of people stop respecting their authority, stop following their instructions, stop responding when we're made aware of a law or a violation, then there is no criminal justice system. And I think that's what we saw in Brunswick. We saw a situation where the people lost faith in the criminal justice system. They lost faith in their local sheriff, whoever was responsible for making the initial arrest. They lost faith in the district attorney. They lost faith in the Georgia Attorney General and the governor and on up the chain, because nobody stepped up and enforced the Constitution and the laws that they should have been enforced. And now we're trying to play catch up to see whether or not we can do something, get the train back on the rails. And it'll be some time before we know whether or not that happens. As you and I discussed prior to the show, going forward, no matter what happens, there are going to be people out there who suspect the process now because they've seen what happens when the process isn't implemented as it was intended to be implemented.
Senator Talbert makes a really good point. We need a bridge between law enforcement and the community. We need to be building that up and not destroying it. And when we do things that show a lack of integrity in the system, it makes every piece crumble down, and it makes it difficult for the innocent people to be protected. It makes it difficult for the guilty to be protected when we don't do what we're supposed to do and show integrity in every aspect of that system.
Right. Thank you, gentlemen. Pastor Goodman, from a faith community perspective, I know a lot of times it's always a struggle sometimes with faith and politics or religion and politics. And a lot of times the church is silent, in my opinion, when stuff like this happens, unless it's somebody that is in a certain particular church and their church may say, hey, this was unjust because that's my member or whatever. But as a whole, where do you see the faith community and what do you think that they should be doing in times like these when we see the injustices, when we see people struggling even with faith because they feel like they can't depend on the faith community, they can't depend on the, justice system, criminal justice, they can't depend on anybody. So where do you see faith coming in at?
Thank you again for allowing me to be a part of this this panel tonight. I would push back on what you said. I think that for me, it's not necessarily the faith community. I think you have to parse that out because I think, especially within the Black church, we know the injustices. The problem is that we have a lot of people who claim to be Christians who do not advocate for justice. And so I would push back on yours because I know our church, Tabernacle, and many churches I know are on the front line, been on the front line about injustices and social issues. But the reality is that it's not a concern. I think the Black community, the Black church knows the problem. It's not until we get white people and white churches to admit the problem. So I feel like that's really a lot of the struggle is because it doesn't seem as if we're talking at each other but not with each other. So I echo all the things. I don't know what else to do. We push people to vote. I agree. I tell people all the time is I do not agree with a lot of things that happen on the federal government level, but most of us don't realize that most of our issues are local. Like that's why we have to vote. We gotta be engaged in the local government. And so that's our civic responsibility, regardless of your religious proclivity, you gotta still vote. And so that is a local DA that made the decision in Brunswick not to do it. So I think the churches, the Black churches on the front line, I think we've always been there. We have great movements, Black Lives Matter, but here is the challenge. I think it's getting other groups to understand that our pain and our perspective is real. One of the problems I had with this situation, as with many that have happened throughout the years, and we have too many that is happening. My problem from my perspective that I see is when we make a victim, when we try to criminalize the deceased. So we need, like my brother said earlier, I have a problem when as soon as something like this happens, I don't know if it was true or not, they said, well, this brother had something on his record and this happened. So whenever something like this happens, there's always this seemingly criminalization of the dead to try to make it seem as if it was justified. And that's my problem. I think we said it like this. I'm going to assume, my assumption of the situation is the brother was out there jogging and got gunned down by two white individuals. But let's say we take the complete other side. Let's say he did do something and looked at the person's house or whatever. Fine. Have him arrested, go through the judicial system, and then get found guilty. That's what it's for. My problem is that I feel like every time this happens, every time there's a situation from Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, others, we almost as a people have to defend these people as if people have to be perfect to live their lives. And I'm struggling with that because we see on the other side, we see people that don't look like us with AK-47s hollering at police and nothing happening. And I feel like there's an angst and there's an anger there because we're yelling at walls and we're telling people, listen, this is a problem. We feel this way. And even if you don't understand it, at least empathize with people's real feelings. Right. This is real. As a Black man, we struggle because that could have been me. That could have been my cousin. Anytime I see something like that, I'm struggling because once again, it's at a routine traffic stop. It's jogging down the street. It's getting, so that's the problem that I'm really wrestling with. So even as a faith person who leads African Americans and as a thought leader and all those, I'm struggling because I think the real issue is not how we talk about it within our community. At the end of the day, it's not our community. Our community knows the problem. It's not until we get the other communities to understand and have empathy that this is a real problem. Like I'm not just making this stuff up. This is real. We're having to have these conversations with our sons and our daughters. We're having to be careful. It doesn't matter. We have some amazing people on this panel, but when you go out in any situation, they somehow perceive our skin color, our blackness as a weapon that has to be gunned down, shot down, and that's problematic. So once again, for me, it's not that the Black church, we've been talking about it. I'll never forget I had a opportunity to have a real, one of my dear friends is a pastor of a major white church here in Augusta. Not gonna say his name. When stuff was happening with the Colin Kaepernick thing, I said, hey man, let me and you sit on a stage and have a debate or really have an informational about race and what that looks like with our president and all this stuff going on. He was cool, their staff was cool until we had a problem about where we would hold this. They wanted to hold this at Tabernacle. I didn't want to hold it at Tabernacle because Tabernacle people know the problem. Right. I want to go to your church.
That's right.
I need your people to hear someone tell it in a way that they can understand it. And they didn't do it. That fell down. You know, it's cool if we go to the Black community and have a talk about race. No, we know it. We know the issue. Yeah, I want to go to your congregation. I need to go to your context so that they can see and hear someone articulated in a way that's going to be able to let you understand this is a real problem. And that became the issue. So when you bring it up about the faith, it's not just our issue is not just with the Black church. It's really those others who claim to be faith people who oftentimes in moments like this get very silent or don't have no empathy.
Mm-hmm. And I agree. And I guess I didn't mean to seem as if the church.
I'm an apologist for the Black church. I'll be honest. You know,
No.
I don't paint the.
And I didn't mean it from just that we're not doing anything. That's not what I meant. But I guess, like you said, we talk at each other and not with each other. And I see a lot of that even in the Black community because we're in our little silos sometimes. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like you said, even though the problem, we understand it, we know it's our problem in our community. But even within our community, sometimes us having a conversation and coming together as churches, as brothers and sisters saying, hey, together, unity, we're going to confront this on a, different scale.
Yeah,
but
because
I didn't mean any,
No, because I think as a whole, we make asinine statements. Like we'll bring up something like this happens and the next thing somebody say, Black on Black crime. Be quiet. Yeah. Sound foolish. All crime is localized typically. I mean, there's white on white crime. And
it is.
That in absolutely. This is a situation where brother was literally gunned down. At the end of the day, that's different than what happens in a localized, criminalized situation. Please stop trying to make that the same. Right. I hate when I see some of us get up there and say, well, we kill each other too. Be quiet. You sound foolish and you sound really silly. So please be quiet.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate your comments. Unique Mackey, can you chime in from your perspective with your men in training, with your Mackey Foundation, and how you go out to try to mentor young men? Because there are a lot of young men out here without fathers, without any male mentor to look up to. And even, and I don't want to sound like this, but even with the lack of fathers, it still doesn't, like Pastor Goodman say, it doesn't give people the right to kill our children, no matter what, whether they're going down the wrong path. Everybody deserves to be rehabilitated. So speak to your experiences and what you see, especially from a mentoring standpoint and from the young men that you deal with and what you see, because you're out, you and Pastor Goodman, you guys are all out in the community. I mean, I can't take any of that away from you guys because I see you guys. Pastor Goodman has a barbershop series. I think it's a barbershop or locker room series. And you, Unique, with the MIT and working with Youth Challenge Academy. So you can share kind of a few perspectives.
Yeah, I want to, before I go into the mentoring piece, I want to piggyback on Pastor Goodman's sentiments, because we both have relationships with our lighter skinned brothers and sisters, and he's exactly right. Look, it's absolutely ridiculous to even think about two black men with guns chasing down somebody talking about stand your ground. Can you even imagine that? Like that doesn't even make sense. Like that would never we wouldn't even dare to try and stand our ground. Like, I mean, and it says stand your ground. You don't chase somebody down in cold blood. And let's take it a step further. Like Pastor Goodman said, okay, let's say he did it. Let's say he's a criminal and you caught the man doing nothing, but let's say he's a criminal. You got a shotgun. Shoot him in his leg one time. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think y'all correct me if I'm wrong. I think he was shot 3 times. Like, I mean, that's murder. And so I'm assuming something here. But I wonder if these two men went to church. And the reason I say that is because so many racists sit in church, and if you can be a racist and sit in church and not be convicted, you in the wrong church. And sometimes we let people be comfortable in sins they shouldn't be comfortable in. Like we got to preach the whole truth and nothing but the truth. We can't, and I say that to say these conversations, Goodman, you right. We've got to take these conversations outside of the Black church and into the places to where people who may have a relationship with God, but still have some racist sentiments because of how they were raised, or et cetera, whatever. But what we got to understand is that Jesus didn't come just talking theology. He also came talking sociology. He said, I'm coming for the least of these. So how can you claim different economic status? Like this, it's ludicrous to me. And so I just had to concur with my brother in that statement. Like, I mean, we sometimes, we can be on some real BS. Like, I mean, and if this stuff is going to ever change, the hearts of the perpetrators have to change. And so that's where I'm at with that. As it relates to the young men, I mean, I just keep it real with them. Like, you can get shot and killed for exercising. So put the weed down. Don't make sure your tent is legal, so you're not getting pulled over with some. So this police can have some poo-put excuse. Like, if you can get killed for following the law, you need to be on your P's and Q's in your everyday life. So I really challenge the young men that we mentor. Hey, please be careful. Keep your nose clean. Don't give anybody the right to say you were doing anything. Again, not that gives anybody an excuse. It should be innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until proven innocent. But I'm just saying, if we don't stand a chance, like if that I mean, we just have to make sure that we're raising our young men with the integrity and the mindset that they need to have to survive in a world that's not for them.
I hate we got to have that conversation though.
It sucks.
And that's awful. I mean, I'm tired of that one. I'm tired of that conversation that we always got to tell them. And I mean, of course, they need to be excellent, but it's still unfortunate, and it's just really tiring. And it's
That's one of the reasons I wanted to have the conversation, because when all of this stuff going on, Sunday was very tough. I did walk with a group at Diamond Lakes for Ahmaud on Friday. And it wasn't really about, us protesting or anything, it more about honoring him and his life. And I walked for my brother, who was murdered 12 years ago, but I walked for MJ. My godson is 6, and I fear for him. Like, he's so innocent right now, and everybody's his friend. And, how you have a conversation with a 6-year-old that, as he's growing up, he's going to have to figure out how to walk in this world and never know if somebody's going to take him out for any reason whatsoever, just because they don't like him, just because he's Black. So my heart has been heavy, and I had to figure out a way that we could share concerns and share what we feel like may be solutions. Like, I just don't know. Like, I'm like you, Pastor Goodman, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like, I just can't continue to pray about it. I can't continue to hope and wish that it goes away. I just gotta do something. I'm like, what can I do? What kind of action can I take that will make it better for my people? Will make it better for our community? Will make it better for our city, our state, our country? What can we do? We know they don't listen to us when we scream, when we march, when we protest. They don't listen to that. But what changes things is the ballot. What changes things is voting. What changes things is grooming our young men and women to run for political office, grooming our communities to do something other than the norm. Become a public servant, because that's what you become when you choose to run for an elected office. There's not a lot of money in that. But a lot of times we looking for money, but how do we use the talents and the gifts that God has given us to change a community, to change a nation? What can we offer? How can we offer ourselves to build our community, to make us so strong that they won't try us? Because right now, they're not afraid of us going to the polls because we don't vote like they expect us to vote. We vote the way they want us to. We don't. If we don't have anybody in the race, I'm not running, I'm not voting, because nobody that looks like me is in the race, or nobody that I think could, we have different reasons why we don't vote. So what can we do to make sure that we're not having the same conversation tomorrow, next week, next month, next year?
Is that for everyone?
Yeah, anyone.
Let me say this, because I don't want to dominate the conversation, but I will say, I do think we need to understand the significance of our voice. And I also want to say this. Can we just stop saying we're in a post-racial society? I'm bothered by that. Obviously, we've seen a tremendous backlash from the administration of President Barack Obama, and that's obvious. So we need to stop living in this la-la land, like everything is cool and kumbaya. I think people have shown themselves over the last few years that race is a major issue. And we have got to understand, listen, it's a major issue, and it's still a major issue. Yeah. It is still a concern. And so I think, that's one of the problems. I think we also got to, in our community, understand, no, this is not a post-racial thing. This is serious. And if you read the tea leaves, it is a serious thing. Even within this latest coronavirus global pandemic, I tell people, watch what happened.
That's right.
Listen, a few weeks ago, it was a health crisis. As soon as the numbers bared out that it was more Black and brown people dying from this, it shifted real quickly from a health crisis to an economic crisis. Yep. Be clear, that happened because they saw more Black and brown people. When they saw who was really dying, it became an issue, more economic. Let's reopen. Let's get it going. Why? It ain't affecting this certain demographic. Right. So please, let's be honest about the stuff. And that's why we got to have frank conversations. Yeah. Be honest. So there is power in our voice and power in our vote. But don't act like everything's cool. No, we are literally in a fight for our lives. Absolutely. And for those of our children and children's children. This is serious. That's why this vote this year, locally and nationally, is huge, regardless of what's happening. Listen, I think they're going to still allow the elections to go forward. they don't believe that we're going to mail our votes in.
Right.
That's why there was a test case up in Wisconsin and the other things.
Mm-hmm.
And so listen, I don't care if you quarantine, whatever. Don't listen. You may have got a $1,200 stimulus check. That don't matter. Please vote. This thing is serious.
It is.
Like this is a major issue we're facing now.
And in saying what you're
feedback on what Pastor Goodwin said. Sorry, go ahead, Tony.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that it's not just about attacking individuals. We can't get anything done by attacking individuals. We have to dismantle systems. We have to go for the system. And so whatever happens to these racists over here in Brunswick, that's them, right? We have to worry about the system itself and making sure that it is correct so that it will not happen in our community, so that doesn't continue to happen in our community. And we can't just allow this incident to shift our focus on what we need to get done carte blanche. It cannot just be, we don't want to be shot down in the streets. We also want to make sure that sentencing disparities go away. We also want to make sure that there's representation in those offices. The DA's office right now has 0 Black attorneys, 25 some odd attorneys, 0 representation for the community. Now, who comes mostly through those jailhouse doors?
Yes.
It's important. And it's not just about the color of your skin, it's about your life experience, because there are implicit biases, there are subconscious biases that go into people's decisions on how they charge a case, on how they prosecute a case, what they offer as a sentencing resolution or a plea deal. And so those things have to be taken down. We cannot just focus on the McMichaels. It has to be the criminal justice system as a whole. It has to be the healthcare system as a whole. It has to be voting rights as a whole. That's the only way that we're going to have lasting benefits that will affect our children and our grandchildren. Or else they're going to be fighting these same fights we've been fighting. At some point, someone's got to play to win. And it does start with your vote. It starts with who's running. It starts with getting the word out and not being too cool to post a political thing on your page. It's about researching and finding out who's really for you, not just what label that comes along with them, but who's actually for you and what their policies stand for. And it's making sure the people who are in power understand that they are accountable to you. that anybody who's running for office, they're not running against someone for their job. They're running for the people's position of trust. And so I'm running for district attorney. And when I look at my opponent, the person who's in that office right now, saying, well, I probably would do something different, that's not good enough. The community requires more than just probably. We need unequivocally for you to state that you're going to be and have integrity, that you're going to protect the entire community, no matter what you look like, no matter what neighborhood you come from, no matter which lawyer you can afford. And so we have to set about doing the work of dismantling systems and not be so satisfied just to get this one small victory over here.
Right.
Oh, we got a Black prosecutor on the case now. Case closed? No. We have to work to make sure that people are represented in every office. And that's how we're going to actually see benefits that last generations.
JW, you said something then, man, because it's not, the murder is a symptom of the disease. There's a system that is empowering people to do things that they think they can get away with. Mm-hmm. So until you change the system, people are going to be empowered. Just like I just said, no Black person in their right mind will get in a truck with their homeboy with guns and say, we're gonna go chase down this white man because we think he's robbing people. Why? Because we don't feel empowered by a system to where we feel like that is okay. So to answer your question, what can we do? I think it starts with prayer, because what we're talking about is not a skin problem, it's a sin problem. People love power. People love position. People love their money. And whenever James Baldwin said, this is profound. He said, if you call me a nigga, it's because you need one. He said, I'm not a nigga, but if you call me a nigga, it must be because you need one. Meaning, it's your insufficiencies and your insecurities that make you feel like I'm worth less than you, and because you need somebody to feel authoritative over. So all of these issues that we're dealing with, they come from the heart, first of all, but then use your voice and your vote. So we can't complain if we're not gonna do anything, and then we have to train our young men to educate themselves. Like put down the cell phone, put down the PS4. It's cool, have your fun. I love 2K as much as anybody, but at the end of the day, if we're not educating ourselves, if we're not in the positions to make decisions and change the system, then nothing is ever going to change.
And Ms. Tonia, just
not to
yeah,
to repeat what's already been said, but I do agree with Pastor Goodman in terms of engaging in the process, being a part of the process. As far as the education process, it's, making sure people understand that votes do matter. And when I say votes matter, it matters whether or not you elect to go down and exercise your right to vote. And it also has the same consequences when you decide not to exercise your right to vote. And you can see what happens when we stay home, when we decide that it's not important enough for us to go to the polls. We get an administration like we have now who seems to work hard on a daily basis to divide us as opposed to bringing us together. The one thing that's scary, the thing that's most scary about this whole process for what happened with Ahmaud Arbery is that what I haven't heard anyone talk about up to this point is that they got away with it for 10 weeks. If we not seen the video, had somebody had it not been brought to the attention of someone, those guys would probably never have been charged. As you can see on the video, there wasn't a big group of Black people standing around watching. It was pretty isolated, the environment in which that killing took place. And so we've gotten very comfortable in today's society with relying on the iPhone phone, and we can record law enforcement, and we can report back and show those videos to people to get attention to people involved in the process. But we have to recognize that everything that goes wrong, all bad conversations, all people, we talked about racism and racists, generally racists these days are smart enough to not allow themselves to be recorded because they know the consequences of the video. Law enforcement has changed, and those like Jared who participated in law enforcement and prosecution, we can see today how much law enforcement has been transformed just by the inclusion of cameras on your cell phone. Now people know that when something's happening, you pull out that cell phone and you record it because that's going to be your greatest and best evidence. Now, when in most cases, when people engage with police and law enforcement, there's the body cam that we have now come to expect that all law enforcement members are going to wear. And when something happens, when somebody is hurt or injured or arrested, and they allege that their rights have been violated, one of the first things that we ask for is, where's the body cam? And if there is no body cam, we know or we suspect that something's wrong, because normally we expect that there will be some kind of record that shows what happened and that will either corroborate or prove to be false what individuals are saying about how they've been treated by law enforcement and the courts. It's so much. It is so important to engage in the process. I mean, who's sitting on that bench, as Jared said earlier, is extremely important. And if you have a judge on the bench who's making life-changing decisions, who doesn't understand the people who's coming before his court, who has not engaged with the community, that makes a big deal. the concern I have now, and one of the reasons that I'm running for the U.S. Senate is if you see the judges that are being appointed by the current administration, many of them have received not qualified ratings by the ABA. Many of them don't look like anybody on this panel, and there's no concern about that. We live in Augusta. Augusta is part of the Southern District of Georgia, of the federal Southern District of Georgia. There are no African American judges on the court in the Southern District of Georgia, and there never have been. And that doesn't seem to be a concern to anybody, even though in my district, when I was U.S. attorney, about 80% of the people who were prosecuted criminally look like the folks on this panel. And to say that you're prosecuting that large a percentage of African Americans and there's never been anybody of color to serve on that bench speaks volumes. So there are a lot of great points that have been made during the presentation today.
Thank you, Ed.
Yeah,
Darius?
Yes, ma'am. Just going off of that, even for our white friends and those that stand in solidarity with the African American community, sit down with your children, talk with them, have conversations with them, and let them know why this isn't okay, why the killing of Ahmaud is not okay. For our white friends that stand in solidarity with us, they need to be educating their children, right? We have to change this from the inside. We have to run for office, as we saw with the two district attorneys in Brunswick and Waycross. One said that the McMichaels had probable cause and justification for killing Ahmaud, and then the other district attorney, for whatever relationship or friendship that she had with the McMichaels, she completely, pretty much blocked the arrest from what reports have shown. Georgia is one of 4 states in the entire country that doesn't have any hate crime legislation whatsoever. We had the opportunity to pass hate crime legislation last year, but it got stifled in the state Senate. So again, we have to change the system with laws. We're tired of marching. We're tired of running. We're tired of protesting. We're tired of talking. And as Mr. Tarver just said, had we not had a video, we wouldn't even be in this situation. So this is a wake-up call for a lot of people. But again, we've been through this more than a dozen times, a few dozen times we've been through this. So again, we have to run. We have to pay attention to local elections. It's not just President Trump that's making all the change, as we can see. We have to pay attention to local elections. We have to be willing to run to change the system from the inside. And we also, for our white friends, they have to be willing to sit down at the dinner table with their children, because we have to change generations for the future, because this is not okay.
Thanks, Ladarius.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I want to say thank you. I know 2 of our panelists have 8 o'clock meetings that they have to get to, Pastor Goodman and Unique. So I really, really appreciate you guys, and for you guys stepping up and doing this. Forgive the technical difficulties. We will put it up on our pages. I will share it. We had a lot of people that were wanting to be a part. My phone has been blowing up because people were trying to get on. But the good thing is it's recorded. It will be able to be shared. And hopefully we can do this again, because I think the more we get folks like us at the table talking and sharing and encouraging and empowering and educating, that's my biggest thing, is educating. Because even with the people calling us now saying, hey, Mr. Tarver's name is not on this ballot, so they don't understand that his name is going to be on in November. The local elections are in May. So we really have to educate our community on what races mean what's tied to what. So there's a whole lot of opportunity to educate, to bring people up to speed, and even our elderly. When you think about the mail-in ballots, the elderly probably are going to slip through the cracks because they don't have anybody maybe that's going to help them with the ballots. They don't know. Some of them can't read, so what are they supposed to do? So that's another level. I was going to piggyback off of Pastor Goodman about, we got to pay attention. Like, this is not by accident. I really don't believe it's by accident.
This is a census year too. Please don't forget that.
Exactly. And I've been pushing census.
Important. That census.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time. I will be connecting with you all soon. Thank you so very much for obliging me being the very first man on Tuesday Talks with Tonia.
Real quick.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Tonya, let
Thank
me
you.
close us out in prayer. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for Tonya pulling this together. We thank you for these brilliant brothers. Thank you for their sacrifice. And we just want to ask that you be with the Aubrey family as they struggle through this pain. We pray that it leads to purpose. Father, we ask for your wisdom, that we lean not upon our own understandings, but in all our ways acknowledge you so you can direct our path. Father, we ask that you will help us to do what it is that we need to do to make systemic change in our communities so that we can live in the peace and the freedom that you died for us to have. Again, we thank you. We pray for health and safety for all of us and our families and those that we're connected to, the communities that we lead and the churches that we serve. And all this we praise in
Amen.
Jesus.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Y'all have a good evening.
All
Stay
right.
safe.
Have a